Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the April 28th County Council session. We're going to start the day with a really awesome proclamation by Councilmember Glass recognizing peaceful protest. Those of you who came for that proclamation, please move forward.
If you are here for the peaceful protest proclamation, come on down. You get to protest in the well. Oh, yes, please. Of course. Hi, good to see you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Come on in. Let me grab one. Good morning, everybody. It is a great day to celebrate democracy and celebrate our ability to share our thoughts and concerns and stand up and fight back and protest against what we see our government doing, whether it is at the federal level or, quite frankly, letting our voices be heard at the local level as well. The right to peacefully protest, the right to organize, and thank you to all our labor partners who are here today, demonstrating that exact same constitutional right. It is guaranteed in the Constitution, the right to peacefully assemble. And we as Americans and we as Montgomery County residents have used that right to continue supporting expanded rights for all of our residents. You know, here in Montgomery County, we use the right to peacefully protest to fight for civil rights at the Glen Echo Park. We as Americans have fought back against Jim Crow by using the right to peacefully assemble during the civil rights movement. And before serving on the council, I ran an after-school program where I helped teach young students and teach immigrant and low-income kids how to use their voice to share their thoughts and their concerns with their own community. And just last month, so many of us in this room and across Montgomery County gathered on our streets, in our parks, on our bridges to protest No Kings, recognizing that nearly 250 years ago, we broke away from Britain and declared that there are no kings in the United States. And we're keeping true to that today by making sure that democracy remains alive and well. And I want to thank everybody who is joining behind me, people who have been leading those efforts, who've been organizing our neighbors, who've been standing up and fighting back. And I want to take a moment and allow each of them just to introduce themselves. Some of them are going to be making more expanded comments, but if you just want to introduce yourself.
Ariani Ong with the Montgomery County Progressive Asian American Network.
Susan Yu, concerned citizen.
Ethan Park, Montgomery County Progressive Asian American Network.
Alice Leach, Montgomery County resident and No Kings protest organizer.
Dominic Rissoli, a Human Rights Commission member.
Namviot Kubega, I believe in this, being from South Africa originally.
Kate Nardone with Empowered.
Melanie Whalen, Empowered.
Anita Moore with Empowered.
Ashima Talwar, Senator Van Hollen, State Director.
Deborah Williams, lifelong resident of Montgomery County and member of WDC.
Debbie Schulman. Debbie Schulman.
Here we are. There we are. If a protest happens and no one hears it, is it still a protest? Yes, it is. So I want to thank our federal partners. I want to thank Senator Also Brooks and Senator Van Hollen for sending their team. They are blocking and tackling up on Capitol Hill, and we appreciate everything that they do. There are some special guests I would like to invite to make some brief remarks as well. First, we'll start with Ariana Yang.
Thank you, Councilmember Evan Glass, and all the members of the County Council for your protection of us residents and the exercise of our First Amendment rights. Since 2016 and across protests, I've seen people from all walks of life. You all, neighbors, grandparents, suburban moms, students, and cancer survivors, among many others. You've come together. Why? Because the compact between the people and the government is unraveling. Did you know that the U.S. has been slipping in the democracy index? Last year, we were 20th in place, and this year, we have dropped to 51st among 179 nations. So you're turning to what you know, which is one of your remaining rights, and what defines you as an American, and that is to exercise free speech. So to the County Council, I want to say, just as you have enacted laws to protect immigrants, please also be prepared to protect a slew of laws and policies to protect residents who are targeted based on their protest participation, political activity, organization membership, social media activity. We're going to need that and en masse. We're also going to need alliances across Maryland with the AG's office, with civil rights organizations, and with other states, and particularly with other states. We will need that because with this fast-moving technology, there are going to be issues with data privacy, with facial recognition, with political surveillance tools and crowd control tools, and we need to get ahead of that. But we want to thank you, the Council, for your efforts to keep Montgomery County a safe haven for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariani. Next, I'd like to invite Lisa Fuller up.
Thank you, Evan. Good morning. At this moment, uplifting peaceful protest is more important than ever. It is a powerful expression of Montgomery County's enduring values, civic engagement, inclusivity, courage, and the fundamental right of every person to make their voice heard. And this proclamation, declared by Councilmember Evan Glass, does more than honor that tradition. It reminds us that peaceful demonstration is essential to justice, to progress, and to democracy itself. My group, Indivisible MoCo Women, has planned and or attended all three No Kings events. The first one, many of the people behind me were part of it, where thousands of people lined Rockville Pike. Was anyone there with us? Was co-planned with two other Indivisible groups. It was a true community effort. We coordinated with the county and local police. We elected officials stood with us along the pike, and our safety marshals in their orange vests helped make sure the event stayed safe, peaceful, and organized. They stepped in when a few signs were not family friendly. They helped us move people between Montrose Parkway to Penzies, who sponsored us, to move friends along the sidewalk to spread out. It was a really tough job, but somebody had to do it. Peaceful protest does not just happen. It takes planning, it takes partnerships, and it takes trust and a lot of courage. That is what I saw on Rockville Pike on June 14th, 2025. I saw people standing not with violence, not with hate, but with conviction. I saw community. I saw families, lots of families with their young children. I saw determination, and I saw hope. And in a time when so many people want us to be divided, they try it every day, discouraged or silent, we choose to come together to speak out and to be heard. Thank you, Evan, for this proclamation. And thank you to everyone here, the council, and to every organizer, every marcher, every volunteer, every safety marshal, every elected official who stood with us, and every person who believes that democracy is not something we watch from the sidelines. Get ready for No Kings 4. We need you all there.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. And our final speaker is Felicia Kimmel.
So, thank you, Councilman, for inviting Empowered here and for recognizing and honoring peaceful protest. There are a few pieces that I'd like to add that we embrace at Empowered. It's kind of become our survival guide, but that is the idea of joy, service, and peaceful and connection. Connecting to each other has become essential in our sanity. So we basically were founded on the premise of two questions. How are we going to effectively push back on this regime? But also, how are we going to survive this emotionally? How are we going to get through the next 4 years? So we kind of follow two premises, and one is focus on the things that you can control, and action absorbs anxiety. So while we can't control what's going on in government, we can control what we do. So we decide instead of wringing our hands, we take action. And that action comes in all different forms, for everything from socializing to a cause, to our action groups, boycott groups, to serving dinner at Shepherdstown. We focus on service and building our community, and even the occasional drum circle, so to help us uplift us. So one thing that I have discovered, because I've been involved in this for decades, but this is different. This time is different than any before. And I've noticed the membership that comes to Empowered, they're not lifelong activists. These are people who are just freaking out and need an outlet and find the door to come in through service, something perhaps a little safer. They get comfortable, we find friendships, we find trust. And then when it comes time for the heavy lifting, we're there and we're ready to go. And we've seen that already in action. So one that, right now, we resist by not succumbing to despair. We find ways to find and cultivate hope. So that is our peaceful protest. So thank you again for inviting us.
Thank you, Felicia. Thank you, everybody, for using your voice to stand up for our democracy. And as crazy as these times are, there is no place I'd rather be than here in Montgomery County. And so with that, I'm going to read this proclamation. Whereas the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States establishes the right of the people to peacefully assemble, and whereas the act of peaceful protest stands as a cornerstone of American democracy, signifying the people's ability to express dissent, demand change, and advocate for justice. And whereas the protection of women, minority, and LGBTQ+ rights exist today due to the tireless efforts of peaceful protesters across America's civil rights history. And whereas Montgomery County is home to a strong tradition of peaceful protest, including when student protesters used civil disobedience to successfully push for the integration of Glen Echo Amusement Park in the summer of 1960. And whereas in March of 2026, No King protests saw a record-breaking 8 million protesters participate from locations all across Montgomery County and the United States. And whereas the values that define Montgomery County are reflected in the civilly engaged, peaceful protesters that make up our communities and neighborhoods. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County hereby recognizes peaceful protests, and be it further resolved that all Montgomery County residents are empowered, engaged, motivated to participate in peaceful protest and to express their personal beliefs, and that includes our hardworking county employees too. Presented on this, the 20th day of April in the year 2026, signed by myself and Council President Fanny Gonzalez. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much to Councilmember Glass. I thought this was a really awesome proclamation. Thank you for your leadership. We're going to move on to general business. Madam Clerk, would you please share the announcements?
Good morning. A public hearing will be held on Tuesday, May 12th, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. on two new FY 27 to 32 Capital Improvements Program projects transmitted to the County Council for consideration. Those are the Glen Echo Spanish Ballroom renovation and Northwest High School. Those wishing to provide testimony must register in advance on the Council website or by calling 240-777-7803, and more information can be found on the Council website. There are two updates to today's agenda. The first is the addition of item 1.5, the introduction and action on a resolution to extend time for review of the collective bargaining agreements for FY27. Also, the agenda has been updated to reflect the removal of items 2B, 2C, and 2D, resolutions to approve the collective bargaining agreements with the Municipal and County Government Employees Organization, the Montgomery County Career Firefighters Association, and the Fraternal Order of Police for fiscal year 2027. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Next, we need approval of minutes for April 7, 2026, council session, April 8, 2026, public hearings, and April 9, 2026, public hearing have been circulated to colleagues for approval. Are there any objections to approving these minutes? Seeing none, these minutes are approved. Next, agenda item 1 is the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Moved by Council Vice President Balkan, second by Councilmember Sales. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It's approved unanimously by those present today. Now we're going to move on to agenda item 1.5 is introduction and action, resolution to extend time to review collective bargaining agreements fiscal year 2027. We need more time for this, and we are going to have a briefing, a presentation on these agreements. I need a motion. Moved by Council Vice President Balcom, second by Councilmember Sales. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It's approved unanimously by those present. I'm going to now turn it to Council staff for work session on the FY7 operating budget, compensations, what, and benefits. Oh, I see your hand moving. I'm like, what's going on? Councilmember, the chair of the GEL committee, Councilmember Kate Storm.
Thank you. No, thank you, Council President. Good morning, everyone. As chair of the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee, our committee met on April 20th to review the FY27 compensation and benefits for all agencies. We were joined by the Council President and the Council Vice President. The committee received a briefing from our Council staff on each element of compensation and benefits. We had the opportunity to have an in-depth conversation and ask questions of the executive branch, as well as members of the County Government's Employees Union, which helped to clarify a number of items that had been bargained. We decided as a committee to recommend that we take up all these items as the full council and have the briefing today. And I want to reiterate again, as we did in the committee session, our thanks to our Office of Labor Relations for their work, and in particular, the thanks to all of our labor unions. We understand that you spend a great deal of time bargaining and talking about the compensation and benefits, and we appreciate that, and we'll look forward to the briefing this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to turn it to council staff. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much. So Mr. Trump and I will go through our staff report memo. Due to request, we've also put together some slides. So maybe you can get a little break from hearing us just talk at you for a while. It is a detailed and comprehensive packet, so it does take a little while to go through. And then we will, after we're done going through everything, we'll have time to answer any questions you all have. We also have our partners from the Office of Labor Relations and Office of Management and Budget available to answer questions, as well as representatives from the County Government Employee Unions here as well, if you have any questions for them. And we will start now. I'm going to begin on page 1 of our memo in the staff report, which is just a summary of all the requested compensation costs across the agencies. In total, the executive's budget as well as the agency budgets recommend about $4.9 billion in compensation costs, which is a 4.5% increase from FY26 to FY27. What's important about this is, as we've discussed before, compensation and benefits make up the majority of spending for county government and the other agencies, which makes sense because running a government is a people-intensive business. We run government with people, and so about 70% of all tax-supported spending is due to compensation and benefits costs. For county government, next week the council will make final decisions on the proposed collective bargaining agreements and other compensation costs not in the agreements for those employees. For MCPS, Montgomery College, and Park and Planning, we're going to talk about some of the elements of their compensation costs as well as part of this presentation, but final decisions on their FY27 pay adjustments will be made by their governing bodies. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Trumka.
Thank you, Mr. Howard, and good morning, council members. So we're going to start on page 2 of this memo with the pay adjustments recommended by the county executive for county government employees. And you'll see in the bullets in the middle of page 2, all of these numbers that I'm about to present assume a service increment of 3.5% for employees who are not at top of grade. So the negotiated agreements with the FOP and police leadership would see a total pay increase of about 6.5% this year. For IAF members, 6.0%. For McGeo members, 6.35%. Again, those who are not top of grade, and that excludes deputy sheriffs and correctional officers. For those, as we'll discuss in a couple minutes, there's salary schedule adjustments that would bring the total 1-year increase in salary to between 7.92% and 10.6% for the deputy sheriffs and about 7.9% for correctional officers. And then lastly, non-representative employees tracking what McGeo members would get would see a 6.35% increase. So as you see on the slide on the screen, the MCPS budget includes a 3.25% general wage adjustment, or GWA, and steps averaging about 3.5%. And we note that for federal employees, they'll receive about a 1% COLA this year and a 1.5% step, and state of Maryland employees will receive about a 1.5 to 2% COLA and a 2.5% step. Pages 4 and 5 of the packet show a comparison of the general wage adjustments and inflation over past years, and you'll see that the general wage adjustments awarded to county government employees have well exceeded the rate of inflation during this period. So we're now in the middle of page 4. Okay. All right, so I will try to get the correct page numbers. I will not just cite page numbers. Okay. So we're up to section 1.2, the salary schedule adjustments, and we'll discuss the deputy sheriff's salary schedule adjustment. The executive recommends adjusting the entire salary schedule for deputy sheriffs. That is, taking the entire salary schedule and moving it up, akin to a second GWA, from about 1.57% to 4.06%, depending on the position and the years of service. The GWAs and increments would be added over and above the salary schedule adjustments, and the executive estimates the cost of this enhancement at about $245,000 annualized. Now, throughout our memo, we include in italics justification that we received from the Office of Labor Relations for each of the executive's recommended provisions. And here, the justification here centers on the need to attract recruits and address pay compression. Similarly, for congressional officers, there's a salary schedule adjustment of 1.57%. This is uniform throughout, and OMB estimates that at about $516,000 annually. We're going to skip to the longevity section 1.5 of the memo. As part of the negotiated agreements with the IAFF, the executive recommends advancing the third of their 3 longevity increments from 24 years of service to 22 years of service. And again, as stated by OLR in the italics, the intent of the change is to incentivize retirement at 25 years of service, and they also cite the risk of injury. Continuing, the executive calculated the cost of this enhancement at about $548,000 or $1.2 million annualized. And for the 76 members that this would affect, that comes to about $14,700 per employee. Now, since OLR stated that the intent of this was to incentivize retirement, we note that this change in longevity increment, if it succeeds in incentivizing firefighters to retire earlier, then that will have an additional cost on pension and retiree health benefits. Council staff asked for an actuarial analysis, and that analysis came back showing that additional costs incurred in FY27 would be about $651,000, bringing the total cost of this at an annualized basis in the first year at about $1.7 million or $23,000 per eligible employee. At the GO work session, Chair Stewart asked for additional information about injuries referenced by OLR in their justification. As of the writing of this memo, we have not received any additional information. We're going to continue now on proposed retirement benefit and retiree health enhancements. We're now discussing the modifications to the RSP and the GRIP retirement plan. The RSP is the retirement savings plan, which is a 401A plan where employees choose their investments. The GRIP is the guaranteed retirement income plan where the county guarantees 7.5% return. So at present, the county contributes 8% of employee salary into the RSP or GRIP, and employees contribute 4% of their salary. The executive's agreement with McGeo would change that contribution rate to 9% of salary in next January, and then 10% in January 2028 from the government side, and from the employee side to 5% of salary next January, and by January 2028 to 6% of employee salary being their contribution. In addition, the agreement between the executive and McGeo would add a post-retirement annuity option that would provide employees with an option to roll over the balance of their GRIP into an annuity that guarantees regular payments for duration of their lives with a cost of a living adjustment up to 2.5% annually. In the italics, you'll see that the justification we received is to make the GRIP more like a pension plan, and the CE estimates that the cost of these modifications at about $3.2 million per year. So when fully implemented, because this is what's in the FY27 budget, is just 1/2 year of a 2-year roll-in, it's 1/4 of the cost. The full cost when fully implemented in FY29 would be between about $12.8 million and $14.5 million. And these are costs that are not in the FY27 budget. They will roll into the base budgets in FY28 and 29. At the GO committee, as was mentioned, the Council Vice President attended the meeting, and Ms. Balcom asked about information about voluntary deferred compensation plan, and what we learned from the executive branch is that a very high percentage, 88% of employees participate in the deferred compensation plan. Next, we'll discuss the pension modifications for deputy sheriff, correctional officers, and correctional staff. The executive negotiated multiple modifications on their pension benefit. Just going to highlight one of the elements, and that's changing the eligibility criteria for normal retirement for these employees. Most notably, that removing the minimum age requirement for employees with 25 years of service, yet another incentive for people to retire at an earlier age. Again, council staff asked for an actuarial analysis about the effect of this pension change on pension costs and retiree health. By FY31, the cost will be about $81,000 a year. We did not receive any estimate of how this would affect retiree health costs. Next, we'll be talking about the extension of retiree health benefits for certain part-time employees. So this comes from the executive's negotiation with McGeo and would extend eligibility for retiree health insurance for certain part-time school health and crossing guard employees hired before 2023. You'll see the OLR justification, and they cite that these groups did not clearly understand that if they elected not to participate in a retirement plan, they would be ineligible for retiree health benefits. So that's the justification given for that increased of eligibility for retiree health. What staff notes is that the proposal does create a different eligibility guideline for these employees compared to other employees. It is county policy established in 2011 that employees have at least 10 years of credited service to be eligible for retiree health benefits. This negotiated agreement would offer these employees the benefit after 7 years of service. We do in our memo present some staff comments on the policy and cost implications of the proposed retiree enhancements. And so on the policy side, we'll start with a brief discussion of the GRIP and retirement benefit.
Can you please state the page number so everybody can follow?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm back on the correct pages. Okay, we're on the bottom of page 9, and we're back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good. So the executive recommends for the GRIP, transforming the GRIP into a benefit akin to the pension. And we note that in 1994, the county established a policy to discontinue pension benefits for new non-public safety employees. So in essence, this recommendation would run counter to the policy. Also on the policy side, we raised the issue on the top of page 10. Yes, on the top of page 10, that the new incentives to encourage firefighters, deputy sheriffs, and correctional officers to retire after fewer years of service, these may impact the county's efforts to retain public safety employees and to meet staffing requirements. And then on the cost side, as we've pointed out, there are large cost impacts beyond FY27. Notably, the GRIP and RSP modifications could add $12 to $14 million in obligations by FY29. And again, the pension contributions and retiree health insurance implications of the incentives to encourage certain employees to retire after fewer years of service. Moving on to the bottom of page 10, pages 10 through 12 present information on new collective bargaining provisions related to annual medical examinations for firefighters, reimbursements for firefighters to receive multi-year cancer blood testing, and a new incentive program for emergency communication center personnel. There's much detail in the memo. If council members have questions, we can go back to the details about that later. But now we're going to jump to page 12 to discuss the cost of the pay adjustments. And there's a discussion starting on page 12 and a table on page 13. In total, the pay adjustments and benefit adjustments recommended by the executive will have a combined FY27 cost of about $54.4 million, about $45 million of that tax supported, with an annualized cost of about $65 million, $53 million of that tax supported. And again, as we've mentioned before, $18 to $20 million in additional costs will roll over into future years. Again, we can discuss this in more detail if council members have questions, but we're going to jump to, I believe, page 14. Yes, page 14 to discuss briefly workforce size. You'll see the table on the top of page 14. The executive recommends adding 119 tax-supported full-time equivalents in FY27, which is a 1.3% increase over the approved FY26 FTEs. The next portion of the memo discusses pay for other county agencies. We've already discussed MCPS, and there's more information in the memo about pay for Montgomery College, Park and Planning, and WSSC. Pages 15 through 18 of the memo has information on the county government retirement costs and the fiscal health of the pension fund. I'll just note one thing on page 17, which is new this year. So you're all familiar with the shift of teacher pension costs that happened over recent years from the state to the counties. There is now in the FY27 budget $27.3 million that was shifted from the state to the counties for unfunded liability related to teacher pensions. But these dollars are not being charged to the school systems in the state. They are now being charged to the county government. So those appear in this county government operating budget. And so now I'll turn it to Mr. Howard to discuss group insurance costs.
Okay, we are now on page 19, where we'll talk about group insurance costs for active employees. And table 10 shows the total cost of $617.8 million, or an increase of 8.9% in group insurance costs for active employees, generally reflecting that healthcare costs are rising, and so the cost to cover those, the payment of those benefits is increasing as well. 2 points about group insurance benefits for active employees, both for MCPS. The first, and I know the Education and Culture Committee discussed this at their work session yesterday, the MCPS has included $40 million in their requested budget to put into their group insurance fund to help address the structural deficit that the council has discussed in previous years as well. And the budget also reflects the second year of a 2-year negotiated change for MCPS unions for cost share, where employees are paying 1% more this year on cost share. So that will have impact on this year budgets as well as ongoing budgets as that change gets fully implemented. On page 20, we have information on group insurance for retirees, or what we commonly refer to as OPEB costs. And there's two portions of OPEB costs. There's the pay-as-you-go funding for current year costs for retirees, as well as any pre-funding. And so table 12 on page 20 shows the pay-as-you-go funding, which is $61.7 million in FY27, at actually a 12.1% decrease. And that decrease is the result of the council's policy adopted in December 2023 via Resolution 2337, which created a new policy for using the OPEB trust to help pay for the county government's current year retiree costs, because the trust was funded enough to begin to do so. And so we're kind of seeing the benefit of that play out over the long term as more funds are now available for other uses. The table 14 on page 21 talks about OPEB pre-funding. And as in past years, the county government and Montgomery College are to the point where we do not need to put any new pre-funding in. And the trust, the earnings earned by the trust is what's needed to sustain funding for that, which is a great place to be. MCPS, we're still in the position of adding pre-funding. And so the actuarially required contribution for MCPS this year is $61.2 million. On page 22 and 23, we have information on the agency group insurance fund balance. And the only point I'll make here is that MCPS still has some issues with their group insurance fund. And there's a chart on page 23, table 17, which shows their projections of how they plan to that fund to work over the next few years, which does show them getting back to a positive fund balance by FY29.
So we'll shift now to trends in group insurance and retirement costs for the county government and MCPS. And as you'll see on the screen, these are significant costs. Both the county government and MCPS benefit costs comprise about 25%, 1/4 of total compensation costs. And we've seen growth in the benefit costs that have exceeded the rate of pay and salary in recent years. So for the county government, you'll see group insurance costs growing in recent years at an annual rate of almost 10%, 9.6% per year. And that's due primarily to increases in healthcare claims. On the retirement side, and we're on table 18 on the bottom of page 24, on the retirement side, you'll see that costs are growing at a much more rapid pace at 21.3% a year. And this is mainly a product of higher than anticipated salary increases and unfunded liability associated with pension plan enhancements that went into effect in previous years. We also have on the slide and on page 25 of the packet information on the cost trends for employee benefits, group insurance, and retirement for MCPS. You'll see the group insurance costs for MCPS are very similar to that of county government, growing by about 9.5% a year. The retirement cost growth for MCPS is much more modest at about 10% per year. It's much more modest than the county government, but in part that's because the county government now pays a part of the teacher pension costs. We now move on in the middle of page 25 to our discussion of compensation cost sustainability. And the reason we discuss this is because there's a council policy established in 2021 addressing the sustainability of county government compensation costs. And I'll read just the first sentence of the policy. As a means to preserve long-term sustainability, the annual growth rate of total compensation costs, including all wage and benefit costs, should be similar to the annual growth rate of tax-supported revenues. So the executive's recommended FY27 operating budget includes tax-supported compensation costs that exceed those in the FY26 budget by about 3.6%, and this reflects the recent amendments that we received from the executive. The executive's operating budget assumes a 5.1% increase in revenues from FY26 and 27, including the proposed property tax, income tax, and fee increases. Over the 6-year period, from FY27 to FY32, the executive's budget shows an annual rate of revenue growth of 3%, again assuming the proposed tax and fee increases. So the executive's Yep. So the executive's recommended rate of compensation growth of 3.6% exceeds the projected 6-year revenue growth of 3% by 0.6%. And that might seem like a relatively small difference between the two rates, but if you calculate it over 6 years, that difference can compound to create a fairly significant gap, about $200 million, between the cost of compensation and the revenue needed to fund those costs. Now, the intent of the compensation sustainability policy is to align recurring pay and benefit expenditures with available resources without requiring offsetting service level reductions or revenue increases. And as mentioned, compensation costs comprise about 60% of county government's operating budget. So if the rate of spending of pay and benefits annually outpaces revenue growth, then we'll have insufficient budget room to fund other priorities or necessitate finding other new revenue sources. On the top of page 28, staff has its presentation of some of the concerns that come out of the sustainability review. And we suggest that achieving long-term budget sustainability requires decision makers to look beyond a single budget year and assume a multi-year perspective. The county has adopted some practices that you've heard of today that promote long-term sustainability. We have a long-term commitment to fully fund actuarial determined pension contributions. Similarly, the OPEB funding policy adopted by the Council in 2023 has made available additional funds to cover a larger share of current year retiree health claims. And to the executive's credit, in each of the past 2 years, the recommended budget has included general wage adjustments that take effect at the beginning of the fiscal year, thus minimizing the impact of pay adjustments on subsequent fiscal year budgets. However, in contrast, certain practices produce fiscal impacts that multiply in subsequent fiscal years and may create future sustainability challenges that appear less tangible in the first year. These enhancements, compensation enhancements that are staged over multiple years, may seem to have a manageable fiscal impact at the outset, but may lock in significantly larger fiscal demands on future year budgets. In addition, implementing modifications to future obligations such as retirement and retiree health benefits without conducting comprehensive actuarial assessments may result in an underestimation of their long-term fiscal impact. So each annual budget is a product of both current and past decisions that will in turn affect the sustainability of future year budgets. And this year, the sustainability challenge comes both from the pace of compensation growth and from the obligations placed on future year budgets. I'll just summarize pages 28 through 32 of the packet, discuss compensation-related non-departmental accounts, and also have information on the cost for administering the retirement and OPEB trusts. But I'll now turn it back to Mr. Howard to discuss other compensation issues.
Okay, getting toward the end here. The last couple of compensation issues on page 32. First is the salary schedules. The salary schedules are attached to the staff report. Most of them reflect the negotiated agreements with the county government's unions. There's also the salary schedules that are provided by the Office of Human Resources for the non-represented employees based on the executive's recommendations. And there's 2 other salary schedules that the council is required to review and approve each year. These are for the non-merit employees. Both there's an executive branch schedule and a legislative branch schedule. These are for appointees in both the executive branch and the legislative branch. And the executive branch has included a proposed executive branch schedule for this year, and council staff has put together a proposed legislative branch schedule that correlates in the same manner as we've done in the past with the executive branch schedule. The one thing to note about the non-merit employee schedules is that they only set the minimum and maximum salaries for each position. The actual decisions on pay and benefit adjustments for non-merit employees are at the discretion of the county executive for executive branch employees and to the council for legislative branch appointees. And then we've included on page 34 a summary of agency personnel management data that we do each year. So we just want to thank the agencies for continuing to compile and provide this information. It's useful not only in these discussions, but also throughout the year as different issues come up that we can refer to that data about the workforce of each agency. Now we're going to turn to page 35. So in alignment with the Council President's approach, as the committees have done, staff has put together some options for the Council to consider if for potential reductions to compensation costs across the agencies. Understanding that there's a lot of moving pieces to these discussions, so we just wanted to make sure that you had options before you so you can kind of consider everything. So the first option that we've put on page 35 and is on the screen as well is the example of providing funding for a reduced FY27 general wage adjustment across the county agencies. And this table provides examples of what the different costs would be if you provide different GWAs for the county government and MCPS. So we provided a scenario that would show if there was a 1% GWA reduction for all employee groups, if all employee groups were provided a 2.0% GWA, and also if all employee groups were provided a 2.5% GWA. And you can see the different cost variation amongst those different options, or scenarios, excuse me. Option 2, which is on page 35 and 36, and also shown on the screen, is an example of providing different service and longevity increments in FY27. So there's two sample scenarios here. The first would be the savings if there were no increments provided to employees in FY27, and the second would be if a different level of an increment was provided, 2.0% instead of 3.5%. Option number 3 is showing what reductions would be to other proposed compensation and benefit adjustments aside from the salary, general wage adjustments and service increments. And so this just shows an example of if the council chose not to fund some of the different elements, the different savings that would be associated with it. And it's important to note with all of these are not all mutually exclusive. They're all, can be done in any sort of combination or no combination, depending on how the council chooses. And lastly, for discussion, we wanted to show the option that the council president proposed on April 17th, 2026, in her memorandum that proposed a package of changes to the county executive's budget. This included a total savings of approximately $45 million from compensation through a different general wage adjustment, as well as not approving some of the additional components of the agreements. The last thing I'll say is on page 37 and 38, these are the council decision points that you'll be deciding next week. And I just wanted to point out here, when you have the discussion next week, there's going to be two separate components of decisions. The first set of decisions, which are on page 37 and 38, are the non-collective bargaining agreement related provisions. So you'll go through and make decisions on those. And then separately, you will go through and make decisions on the collective bargaining agreements. And in case there's any questions that you want to discuss today, I've included on circles 47 through 51 is the decision chart that Ms. Wellens provides each year related to the CBAs. So these are all the different elements that you'll have to make decisions on related to the CBAs. Most of them are things that we've talked about as part of this presentation. There also are a few other different types of provisions that we didn't go into as part of this presentation. So just wanted to make sure you all had that in case you had questions about that. And with that, we'll turn it back over to the council president. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our team for doing for that detailed presentation. I told everyone I'm going to put everything on the table and let my colleagues decide as the way it should be. Again, this is a briefing. We're going to start making important decisions on Monday. So every single day next week, we're going to have straw votes. Not just for this, but every single committee decision that has been made so far will be up for a vote next week. We are in a really tough situation, and what we were presented by the county executive is not sustainable. It's not. So with that, I'm going to open it up for colleagues. If you have questions or you'd like to comment, please turn on your button to be on the queue, and I'm going to start with Councilmember Keith Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you to Council President, and thank you to our team for the excellent packet and presentation. I just wanted to go back to page 9 on the school health and the crossing guards, because that was something we did spend time in government operations and fiscal policy discussing. As folks know, I don't like to go against our established policies. So this was one place that I had questions. We had a good conversation with McGeo on this, and this is a one-time issue because there was a great deal of confusion, particularly coming out of COVID, and these employees did not realize that if they weren't in the retirement system, they weren't eligible for health care benefits. And so I believe, Ms. Harling, I think we said it was about 20 employees last week. I don't know if we have 70, sorry. Yeah. Is it 70?
We don't have a confirmed number. There's
Okay.
a set time frame for McGeo to identify the impacted individuals. I believe McGeo mentioned a number around 70.
Around 70, okay. Thanks. I couldn't read my handwriting. So it's around 70, but McGeo will be identifying them. And again, I just wanted to emphasize this was a one-time matter given some confusion. So just wanted to dig into that a little bit more because we spent time on the committee discussing that. And then I had a request to the council president and to staff as we begin, as you noted, council president, that we're going to take straw votes next week, looking at the 119 new positions. If we could, really think about some of those new positions, how many of them are positions that are being put forward, but that basically pay for themselves. We know there are some. We also know some of those new positions are mandated by legislation that we have passed in the last year. So I think as we're going through and having the straw votes, it would be helpful to understand that and unpack those 119 new positions. Thank you.
I'll turn it to staff on this point. We have discussed this already.
Okay.
I just want to make one comment that first we should have all those positions. Those new positions will be on the reconciliation list automatically according to the council president's approach. But I also wanted to note the other category of those positions. Some of them are switches from grant funding to general fund. So that's the other category of position that I want to make sure everyone's aware of, and that will be part of the discussion.
Yes, this is an issue that the unions brought up with me as well, and everything will be detailed next week. I asked staff, everything is going to be out there for people to see. This is going to be the most transparent process that we have seen before. I'm going to put everything out there as it should be. So with that, we're going to move on to Councilmember Wojo-Wondo. Go ahead.
Good segue. So there is obviously an option 5 to honor the negotiated contracts. That is an option that we went over, just to be clear, that is also an option, correct?
Yes, these were options for reduction, not for options for keeping the same.
So we went over what the actual cost is, and obviously an option is to honor them. That's what I'll be supporting. These were negotiated in good faith. Yesterday, I released, and I'll be releasing more detail to colleagues today, a option that will allow us to honor the contracts and support our social service nonprofits and not raise property taxes. It is possible. I want to thank the council president for putting out an approach as well. While I don't agree with everything in there, I think it is important that we discuss these things openly and talk about them, and I appreciate that. I did have one question as we head into next week. What's the assumed vacancy and lapse rate that's built into the compensation budget?
I can speak, and then I'll maybe ask OMB to
discuss as well.
But
maybe you start, and then we.
Yeah. So for each department, as for county government, as OMB goes through the budget building process, they look at the vacancy rate, the historical lapse that's baked into each department's budget, and they, based on the actual trends of filling positions, they make adjustments to that lapse. So, for example, if a department has done a better job at filling positions, they may decrease the lapse assumed for that budget because that's not realistic. And so you'll see some different line items in individual department budgets where the budget has gone up because there's less lapse being assumed in the budget. And similarly, for some departments, it might go down. So I will say, compared to, I think it was approximately 3 years ago when the council had several discussions on vacancies and lapse, I think the budget is in a much different position than it was at that time, when there's a much more refined process for making sure there's an accurate assumption of lapse and vacancies and how that impacts the actual budget.
Is there anything wrong with B? I mean, what I'm really trying to get at is it a realistic? Is it realistic? I'm concerned there might be some inflation of costs, considering that we won't fill all these positions.
Shantae Jackson, Office of Management and Budget. I believe Mr. Howard eloquently stated how we come to the lapse adjustments for each individual departments. And I really don't have anything to add with the methodology that he explained for how we came up for every department. If you want information about specific departments, we could provide that, but other than that, the methodology, he explained it very well. I don't have anything to add.
Okay. I may follow up offline, but I appreciate that. I just trying to understand how that relates.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Great questions. I scheduled this for 2 hours. I don't have a single council member wanting to. Oh, there you go. Council Vice President Marilyn Balcom.
That might be better. This is a really difficult conversation, of course, and in the vein of being truly transparent, I just want to state for my colleagues' benefit and just to put it out there, I have great concerns about this budget. I don't think that it's time to raise taxes. I think that people are really stretched to the limit. I would assume the people in this room as well. And to increase taxes, increase property taxes at this time is going to, that decision will put a lot more people in the hole. And so I don't support a property tax increase. And I've looked at the numbers a lot of different ways, and I don't know how we're going to get there without looking at compensation. And I'm looking forward to seeing your proposal. I haven't seen it, or other proposals out there. But I do want to just talk about compensation. So when we talk about negotiated contracts, there's always been this back and forth about the timing of the contracts, because the county executive negotiates in good faith with our unions, negotiates the contract. But the county council approves the contract as part of the budget. And so I understand, and I've always asked why is the timing such, because it just doesn't make sense, because a promise is made that is not approved until the budget is final, or until compensation is final. But I understand that the county executive can't really build a budget until he has his compensation numbers. So it is a bit of a chicken and the egg, or a horse before the cart scenario. So I just wanted to put that out, that the timing is difficult. But then I also want to say that we start every budget, the county council starts every budget looking with good intentions to first looking at our spending affordability guidelines. We all agree that based on where we are by a number of metrics, where we are in terms of how much we should spend. I'm sure you all look at your budgets. I look at my household budget the same way. How much can we spend? That's how we start the budget. And then we ignore it. And so that's one issue of spending affordability guidelines. And then we also put fiscally sound policies in place to make sure that the government is fiscally sound. And we have a couple of those that we're going against in this compensation packet. One is the compensation cost sustainability. It's really important that we look at compensation is the biggest part of our budget. And if the very biggest part, by far, if the biggest part of our budget is growing beyond our revenue, first off, it creates a hole in this year, this fiscal year, any fiscal year, but it has an even bigger impact on future years. And so we continue to put ourselves in bigger and bigger trouble. We started off the conversation, I don't know if it was in the GO committee or in the original budget presentation. If we approve this 6.3 cent tax increase this year and fund everything that's in this budget, next year we're looking at an 8%, 9% tax increase, all things being equal. And so it's just fiscally irresponsible to continue digging the hole. So that's one issue from the cost sustainability. And I also just want to mention the pensions. We know one of the things that we always have to grapple with is making sure that our pension liabilities, our retirement, both for pensions and for health insurance, retiree health insurance, that our pension funds are sound. We make a commitment to our employees to make sure that those pensions and the retirement benefits are there in perpetuity. By looking at the GRIP and looking at a pension-like scenario of guaranteeing a certain percentage after retirement, I understand before retirement, the guarantee, but after retirement, it puts us in another liability that the county council bodies 8 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now will have to make sure that those funds are there. So I just think that in this regard, we're going backwards. And so I know we're not making any decisions today. And this compensation, although it is the most significant part of our budget, it is only one sliver of the budget. So we have to look at this gap that we have and put all the pieces on the table. I just didn't want to not say anything, so I just didn't want this time to go by without sharing my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councilmember Lori Ansels.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for the report, the updates, and giving a clearer picture of where we are. But where we are is in a time of unaffordability. Where we are is a time where residents are feeling house poor, can't find employment, regardless of how much money we are throwing at this situation. We're seeing bread lines get longer, increases in costs everywhere. And so just thinking about our frontline workers and how much we depended on each of you during the pandemic, since the pandemic, and want to ask a few questions regarding the PAYGO fund. In Table 12, I see that the FY27 allocation for county government is much lower than the other categories. Do we have any more information about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the
Table 12.
This is on page 20, Table 12 for the retiree group insurance pay-as-you-go funding. And so that results from the use of the OPEB trust to offset a portion of the cost of the current year retiree health costs for county government to pay for current year claims. And that is coming out of the policy that the council adopted in December 2023 to start using the trust based on actuarial evaluation to cover some of the current year costs. So it's kind of, for years we were putting money into the OPEB trust, building up that trust, and the county government trust has now reached the point where we can start drawing money out of the trust to help pay current year claims, similar to kind of what we do for the pension system. So that's the reason that the county government is a decrease this year, because we've gotten to a point where we have more money in the trust so we can pull more out.
So how much can we pull out in the fiscal year?
So this year, based on the actuarial evaluation under the new policy, it will be $34.5 million from the OPEB trust will be used to pay for the current year health claims. So the total funding for county government retiree health is about $61.7 million. 34.5 of that is coming from the trust, and $27.2 million is coming from the general fund.
Okay, thank you. I reviewed the general wage adjustment for neighboring jurisdictions. Did we have any information about other jurisdictions like Prince George's, Howard?
That was all we had at the time that we put the packet together before the GEO committee meeting. We have our team reaches out each year to the other jurisdictions, and sometimes other jurisdictions don't have data yet, and so they don't have anything to share. So these were just the jurisdictions that we were able to get data from.
So we're meeting next week. Are you able to reach out and see if we can get that information before we meet?
Certainly.
Okay. And how does the current pay scale for the deputy sheriffs and correction officers compare to neighboring jurisdictions as well? If we can include that information.
Sure, we can look and see what we can find on that.
Okay. And then the justification for increasing the county's contribution to the RSP and the GRIP from 8% to 9%, and then 10% in fiscal year 28 beginning this year. Is there a reason why we are doing it this year during such a difficult budget season?
Turn to OLR to answer that.
Thank you for the question. My name is Jennifer Harling. I'm the Chief Labor Relations Officer for the county. The discussions around GRIP, it was, a negotiation, a back and forth with McGeo on the enhancements they would like to see for their members versus the enhancements we felt were affordable. We settled on the 2 contribution increases, but note that we did include an employee contribution increase as well, so it's not solely on the employer to contribute that increase into the fund. So we did look at, sharing the contribution increases, and we definitely looked at ways to limit costs or offset costs where we could, just generally when we were bargaining compensation items.
Thank you. Good morning.
How can I say no?
Please introduce yourself.
There's no way I can say no. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's interesting.
Can you
to
please
me. First of all,
introduce your-
Gino Wren, President McGeo, UFCW Local 1994. I'm going to share my frustrations first.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me that when we do these analyses, no one ever talks to the union. And I've been complaining about that your staff boxes us out of the process every single year. Because if they would pick up the phone or schedule a meeting with the people that actually negotiated the contracts, because they weren't there, they would better understand things like intent and comparability and what we tried to achieve. This county continues to have a terrible recruitment and retention problem. So everything in this contract was designed to keep us competitive in one of the most competitive public sector job markets, bar none. We've had a little bit of blip in the federal government. That's because lunatics are in charge, but they'll be gone and we'll get back to normal. So let's not run around with our hair on fire that the sky is going to fall. It's a temporary setback. Now, let's talk about the GRIP. The GRIP is not a guaranteed pension plan. I want you all to understand that. And the party spent years studying all the pension plans throughout the state of Maryland And guess what? 13 of our primary public sector competitors all have a defined benefit plan. But great and mighty Montgomery County doesn't have one for everyone other than public sector that was hired from 94 on. The county seized a political moment when there was a transition in representation, when we divorced ourselves from 400 and got our own local to take advantage of shutting down the pension plan. And so from there on, our nurses, our crisis center people, everybody, bus drivers, everybody has had to go on without a pension plan. Thousands of workers have left this employment without a pension plan. We're the only ones in the state that has allowed a workforce to continue without the safe security of a real pension plan. So here we are, the county and the union finally figured out we can no longer do this. And instead of trying to put everybody back in a defined benefit plan, which should have been what happened, we came up with a compromise. Let's redesign the GRIP plan to make it look and operate like a defined benefit plan. And that's exactly what we did. But in order for it to achieve that goal, both parties have to put more money into it, because benefits are designed on how much is going to be in your account. And if there's not enough money going in and enough money that is compounded by the yield that that account is given, you're not going to achieve that goal. So we finally, since 1994, we've been chasing this. Let me be clear about that. Finally, the parties understand that we have to fix the pension plan to maintain our competitive edge, but more importantly, treat our public employees equitably in comparison to everybody else.
Thank you.
So the mere fact that this workforce's future is on this table is offensive.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to the council member Sells. She hasn't finished her question.
Oh, no, that was all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Council Member Evan Glass.
Thank you, Madam President. Appreciate the conversation. And as has been noted, this is an extremely difficult budget. When we received it a few weeks ago and saw that the top line number included a 6.1% property tax increase, it took a little while to go through it and realize that there was so much predicated on that. And the reality is, a property tax increase is not simply for millionaires and billionaires, it's for everybody. And that's what we're grappling with. Because I've spoken with so many people in this room and outside this room who understand and support progressive taxation, but recognize what this proposal means to them and their families, especially at this point in time. I also think it's not coincidence that today we honored peaceful protests and First Amendment and constitutional rights and self-expression, and that extends to collective bargaining, recognizing that is a cornerstone of our democratic principles. And I appreciate everybody being here today and all those who have written into us as well. But as has been noted, it is a fragmented system and it makes it very complicated. And I want to go back to something that Mr. Trumka had noted in the readout. It seems every few years there are more pension shifts that continue coming down from Annapolis, and there are additional pension shifts now for MCPS. Can you talk about that and what that collective financial, what that means to the budget, especially over the last number of years?
So let's pull the numbers, because it hits both the MCPS budget and the county budget. Good, thank you. So for just very brief background, on the MCPS side, they have a pension plan, a local plan that affects most of their non-teachers and a pension supplement for everybody. But what we're talking about, Councilmember Glass, to your question, will be to the state-provided teacher pension plan. And for that, for FY27, there's about $92 million in the MCPS budget to fund the teacher pension plan. Prior to, I believe it was FY12, all those dollars were in the state budget. And they've been gradually shifted towards the MCPS and other school district budgets throughout the state. Not to get too technical, but those are dealing with what are known as the normal costs, the costs incurred each year for paying out the benefits. In the past 2 years, the state has shifted now to Montgomery County about $27 million of what's known as unfunded liability. That is to make up for the gap of not having enough money in the system that the state runs to pay out the pensions. And so starting last year and then again with this year's budget, a total of $27 million is being shifted. But although the county wasn't aware of it at the time it was passed, no county in the state was, those dollars were designated not to be put in the school system budgets, but to be put in the county government budgets. So we've got a total of about $120 million of teacher pensions that a decade ago were not in county or school system budgets that are now paid for in county and school system budgets. And for us, the specific numbers are $92 million embedded in the MCPS budget and $27 million embedded in the county government budget. And we just have to pay the bill. We don't have any control over that.
It is a mandate from Annapolis. I understand that and appreciate that the broader context of $120 million over the last number of years. And did I hear you correctly that the addition was $27 million in this fiscal year?
So it's a total of $27 million. It was about $9 million above what it was last year, and it was about $18 million for the current fiscal year, and for the upcoming fiscal year, an additional $9 million that takes it to $27 million.
That, I think, is really important as we talk about the services that we receive, both in government services and in our school services, and looking at those compensation levels and recognizing the mandate that Annapolis has put on us for one particular sector, right? And when we have these conversations, I think it is unfair only to single out one set of worker and not the other, especially when those mandates come from Annapolis. And that is an unfortunate situation that they have put us in to the tune of $120 million over the last number of years. I appreciate this conversation. There is a lot of work that we need to do here. But fundamentally, people live in Montgomery County because of the services that we provide, the work that is done, and that's what makes Montgomery County a wonderful place to live, and we have to keep focused on that. So I can't say I look forward to this work. It is important work. It has to be balanced, but there's a lot of puts and takes that we will have to take into consideration, but fundamentally we have to remember why people live here, why people work here, and why people choose Montgomery County. So thank you, Mr. Trumka. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Dawn Lukey.
Thank you, Madam President. And I want to headline that I don't have a question, but again, I too wanted to speak to this because this is something incredibly complex that we are all dealing with. And when I say we, I don't just mean the 11 of us sitting up here. I am talking collectively, and there is not a place that I go right now where there isn't someone worried about impacts, whether it's a resident, whether it's our workers, whether it's our different social safety net programs. Everyone is feeling strain, and this is not a position that anyone wants to be in at all with respect to any part of our budget. And I thought back to 2024 when we were sitting here 2 years ago and we were approving the contracts in the FY25 budget. And it allowed for what everyone wanted in that moment. And, there are other things I can speak to about other parts of our county budget that have also, where we have not, and I'm using that we, again, not to mean just the 11 of us, we, Montgomery County, has not done a great job of sorting out how to live within what we have and what we can do versus what we can't. And I want to emphasize that core government services are what our residents expect. And that's what you all deliver. And I know that. And I do not lose sight of that. But I was worried when we approved the budget in 2024 about sustainability in the long run. And I spoke to that at that time. And then later that year, our national politics took a pretty bad turn in November of 2024, which has led to devastating effects for our economy. And then I think about Maryland as a whole. And when you think about like the funnel of crisis, everything's coming from here and then it lands on local government. And I'm saying that as the representative to the Maryland Association of Counties. And I can tell you everybody from the Eastern Shore to Mountain Maryland, and I certainly raised my voice about this with respect to the issue that Councilmember Glass just spoke to with the teachers. And to be fair, the state had intended to shove double that amount onto the local jurisdictions. We got a 50% discount, and it's not really helping us any. And I think about that, and I know it's an election year, and I know that I need to buckle up for FY28 with respect to the state budget, because it'll be after this next statewide election, right? And the state's not in a better fiscal place. It just isn't. And so I know that we as a Montgomery County have often been touted by the state as the economic engine of the state. I also know we are not running our engine very well. We're not getting there, right? That is creating more problems, not just for us, but also impacting the state as a whole, because Montgomery County's economics is not functioning at the level it needs to be. And so I just want you to know that I am being thoughtful, mindful, and reflective of all of this in totality, because as difficult as the situation is, on behalf of all of our residents, on behalf of all of our employees, and knowing that we have very limited things which we locally can control. A lot of stuff is happening to us or around us that we can't control. My goal is to be as methodical as possible and to mitigate as much harm as possible on behalf of our employees, on behalf of our residents, to make sure we can weather this storm in the best possible way moving forward. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. So with that, thank you to everybody who came today. And again, we're going to start voting next week, starting on Monday. And with that, we are in recess until 1 p.m. Thank you.